Hi, my name's Steve Butler. This extra credit assignment will focus on microcap equities and the valuation process thereof. I'd like to also thank in advance the Chief Financial Officer of Acorn Capital, Mr. Douglas Lowe, for his generous assistance in putting this presentation together. This table provides a concise overview of the microcap sector of the Australian market relative to other indexes. It is important, however, to first define what a microcap is. In Australia, a microcap is often defined as a company with a market capitalisation of less than 250 million, whilst in the US equity markets it is often the case that companies with a market capitalisation of under 500 million will be described as microcaps. This brief snapshot of the ASX Microcap Index relative to the S&P ASX Small Ords and the S&P ASX 100 demonstrates the significant size of the sector in its quantities, participants, but its insignificance with its total market capitalisation making up only 6.5% of the wider market. Due to the wide nature of companies which fall into the microcap industry, a large exposure to all sectors is encountered. The small cap sector of the Australian market is made up of a large percentage of developing companies rather than established companies. And examples of Australian growth stories in the resource sector, biotech and industrial sector can be seen in well-known brands and companies known to many Australians, many of which came from small and humble beginnings as listed small caps. This weighting can be seen in the below diagram. It also clearly demonstrates the focus of the larger end of the Australian equities market is heavily in resources and financials. This slide demonstrates the lack of in-depth research and analysis carried out on the microcap sector, magnifying the information gap which often exists between the market and intrinsic value of a firm. The microcap sector, for this reason, provides opportunity to those able to extract quantitative and qualitative information on firms. This table demonstrates that on average, for the largest companies listed, up to 16 analysts may at any one time be covering the operations of the company, but in the microcap space, if lucky, 1 or 2 analysts may be active. The microcap valuation process is based on sound, in-depth, quality research. The following slide demonstrates the process undertaken in the valuation of microcaps, both which can be undertaken from a retail point of view or from a wholesale fundamental funds manager perspective. The first step is identification of the eligible universe. This identification means that stocks which meet certain criteria are included and some which don't will be excluded. Reasons for exclusion may be the current stock being suspended or a market capitalisation less than a predetermined figure, for example $20 million. The second and third step work towards the identification of an approved list and selecting individual stocks which meet criteria. Identification of the research list and the subsequent approved list is achieved by applying investment criteria to the eligible universe. The investment criteria has 3 sub-steps. This is the first, classification into developing or mature groups. Developing and mature companies will have research categories and also research demands different, so the 2 groups will have different analytical approaches. The second step is investment screening based on both quantitative and subjective analysis. Mature companies are ranked according to ratios such as price and operating surplus or price to earnings ratios, price to net assets or enterprise value to EBITDA. These multiples provide a quantitative tool in which the companies can be analysed and compared. Developing companies screen, in this case, a more subjective process with emphasis on appraising the management history, establishing the value of assets, or determining the company's potential to generate earnings in the future. The screening helps reduce the eligible investment population to those considered worthy of further additional in-depth research. This is where the third step comes in, the final screening based on the investment research. The objective of this final screen is to arrive at an approved list which includes intensive company analysis, and most of this is a time-consuming and difficult stage of the investment process. Further desirable characteristics of microcaps can be the following. These are factors which an analyst may look for during the investment process. Outlook for external factors, that is, cyclical nature of investments. Additional strategies for earnings growth outside of the core line of business, for example, product innovation. The strength and realistic forecasting of cash flows, the ability to finance future growth, sound business strategy, competitive strengths in the sector, and a focus on maximising return for shareholders. I will now conclude this presentation with an interview conducted with Mr. Douglas Lowe, the Chief Investment Officer at Acorn Capital. Based in Melbourne, Acorn Capital is Australia's largest specialist microcap funds manager with over $1.2 billion of funds under management. I'd like to again thank Doug for his time and cooperation in putting together my presentation.